Hi everybody, Al Bernstein with another one of my video blogs. You know, the product the sport of boxing gave its fans this year has been very good, as it has been really for most of the years since the millennium. Now, I'm not a cheerleader for boxing, I cover it, but the previous statement is absolutely true, and I'll debate anyone on that subject. So when the Mayweather-Ortiz fight turned out to be yet another mega fight that did not produce a great match, and instead produced controversy, we got the usual misinformed claptrap from the mainstream sports media in the United States. These print, TV, and radio people who only cover boxing when a big fight is on tap did what they always do when a mega fight goes wrong. They said it demonstrates that boxing is a wounded sport that just doesn't deliver what it should. They seized on the moment to use all the cliched phrases that they trot out because they don't know any better. They say it's a black eye for boxing. Boxing keeps shooting itself in the foot. This is why the sport is dying. And of course, there is the inevitable comparison to MMA, in which the mainstream sports media in the U.S. insists that one of these sports has to kill the other. And they decide that MMA is killing boxing. This is all nonsense, of course. Boxing is more of a niche sport, that's true, than it was, say, 20 or 30 years ago. But one might argue that, except for the NFL in America, every sport is a niche sport. Just depends on how big your niche might be. And my criticism is directed, by the way, almost solely at the U.S. media. In many other parts of the world, boxing is covered in a more comprehensive and fair manner. There have been a dozen or more great major fights this year, and a dozen more on a secondary level of importance just underneath it, and then a dozen more great fights at a level below that. Now, these fights are not underperformed, they're undercovered by the media. The Ortiz-Mayweather fight and the Pacquiao-Mosley fight did not deliver great results for the many casual boxing fans brought in by the star power of both the Pac-Man and Floyd Jr. But that does not define the sport any more than a blowout in the Super Bowl defines the NFL, or a 4-0 sweep in the World Series defines baseball, or a terrible finals in the World Cup defines soccer. The mainstream sports journalists, and I use that term quite loosely, should know that. But they're mostly too lazy to do their homework, or too biased, apparently, against the sport of boxing. So instead, they rely on the boxing cliches they keep in their notebooks ready to trot out when a big fight fails. The last quarter of the year has at least 7 great-looking major fights on the docket to add to an already terrific list of 2011 matches. Whatever happens in those 6 fights won't really matter. If the Andre Ward, Carl Froch, Abner Mares, Joseph Agbeko, Bernard Hopkins, Chad Dawson, Hernan Marquez, Luis Concepcion, Lucian Bute versus Glenn Johnson, and Miguel Cotto taking on Antonio Margarito, if all those fights are all great, it won't matter one hoot to the mainstream media, because mostly they will ignore those 6 fights. The only thing that will matter is the November 12th matchup of Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez. If those 2 fighters produce a great fight, then the mainstream sports media will offer some praise. But even then, frustratingly, I assure you, even this will still be misreported. These journalists will use phrases like, "Why doesn't boxing do this more often?" Or, "It's a shame there's only one Manny Pacquiao in boxing." Or, "Unless Pacquiao and Mayweather fight, this doesn't mean anything." Now, all of this will ignore what has actually happened in boxing in 2011, because I can tell you that at least half of those other 6 fights still to come are bound to be really good. And so with that, the complete body of work in 2011 was going to be superb. And if, God forbid, Pacquiao and Marquez is not good, then all we'll hear from the mainstreamers is, boxing is dead. Which will come as quite a shock to the millions of fans worldwide who have observed all these excellent fights and are awaiting more in 2012. But hey, let's not let facts get in the way of a good, predetermined story.